from Lagos, the nation's commercial capital. This is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Olumide Macaulay.
Hello and welcome. Tonight, at least 5 people killed in another gas explosion in Lagos, barely 2 weeks after a similar blast occurred in the Ijuajuwon area of the city. President Muhammadu Buhari presents 13.8 trillion naira 2021 budget proposal to the joint session of the National Assembly, urges speedy passage of the bill. INEC begins distribution of sensitive material ahead of Saturday's Ondo governorship election, as civil society groups raise concern about potential hotspots in the state. And World Health Organization records highest single-day global coronavirus infections since start of the pandemic. Plus business, sports, and later from our studios in London.
On business news tonight, World Bank forecasts 2.1% rebound for sub-Saharan Africa's economy in 2021, despite being on track for 3.3% decline by the end of this year.
On sports news tonight, the French Open women's final will be contested between Australian Open winner Sofia Kenin and Polish teenager Iga Swiatek on Saturday in Paris.
It appears the menace of gas explosions in Lagos State just doesn't seem to go away. Barely 2 weeks after the incident at Ijuajuwon area, another case of gas explosion has occurred in Baruwa area, this time claiming at least 5 lives. According to the acting coordinator of the National Emergency Management Agency, Ibrahim Farinloye, the explosion was caused by a running generator while the LPG tanker was discharging at the gas plant. Emergency officials, including NEMA, LASEMA, and firefighters arrived at the scene shortly after the explosion to contain the resultant blaze.
It's the break of dawn, but residents of Baruwa in Lagos State are starting the day on a rather anxious note. Another gas explosion occurs, and it appears the last thing on their minds is their safety, as they mill around the area to catch a glimpse of the incident. Several properties are destroyed, and several officials say the casualty figure is at least 5 and 8 injuries. However, fire service officials are on ground as they battle to salvage what they can. According to the officials at the scene, a generator may have triggered the blast.
From our preliminary investigation, we saw the hose of a tanker possibly trying to discharge. And already the generator of the plant is on, I think supplying them power. So the compound was already charged. About 5 bodies have been recovered. 8 persons were rescued alive. Out of these 8, 3 were critical, while 5 had minor injuries.
We have 25 houses affected. Out of these 25 buildings that were affected, 10 buildings were severely burned. And with this, we have 16 shops affected. We have 3 vehicles affected. We have 2 Okadas, 1 Mawa Okada and 1 plain Okada affected.
While some of the residents are lost for words, others want gas plants situated far away from residential areas.
When this place was to be established years back, we protested against it because we felt it is not safe for a community where it is highly populated. And we decided that, look, if this should be established here, it will be a calamity later in future. And that is exactly what has happened now.
They have to do something concerning the gas station they are planting where people are staying is very, very dangerous.
The lawmaker representing the area at the State House of Assembly says the situation is already receiving the attention of the government.
The issue is not Lagos State government. Lagos State government has no approval authority on the establishment of gas plant. No. It is the DPPR. And those are the people that we have to take accountable for this ugly situation. Is that becoming too much?
Residents of the area may heave a sigh of relief for now, as another gas plant being proposed for the area is sealed off temporarily. However, this is yet another opportunity for the relevant authorities to take a drastic measure concerning the siting of oil and gas depot. This has become imperative given the occurrences like this one that have claimed not only properties but human lives in recent times.
Meanwhile, our energy correspondent, Olu Phillips, who visited the scene of the disaster, has an update on the situation at the Baruwa gas plant where the explosion occurred.
When you see a property like this, a lot of agencies come into play, and in terms of aggregated approval. So you have the Lagos Safety Commission, you have the building approvals guys, you have the Department of Petroleum Resources, under whose purview all of this falls into. And the big question to ask is, who in the Department of Petroleum Resources actually licensed less than one plot for a big gas plant like this to operate, where, for instance, you have an 80 metric tons of truck discharging liquefied petroleum gas, LPG, while a generator set is running? Who conducted the safety training for these officials? Who goes about in the terms of inspectorate divisions of these government agencies to make sure that people do not flout the rules, especially when licenses have been granted? Again, we ask, who in the Department of Petroleum Resources approved the siting of this gas station here in such manner that doesn't allow for the capacity and the allowances when it comes to safety? The distance between the discharge point and the gantry is a challenge. The distance between the generator house and the gantry is not a safe distance. The distance between where the discharge is happening and the point of sales to where the point of the gas discharge is a big challenge and doesn't meet any specification as far as safety is concerned. Someone needs to account for the dead here. Someone needs to account for the wanton destruction of houses. Someone needs to account for the pains that is being caused Nigerians every day as far as safety issues are concerned.
And the state governor of Lagos, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, has commiserated with the families of the victims at the Baruwa gas plant explosion that claimed lives and destroyed property worth several millions of naira. Governor Sanwo-Olu, who expressed deep sorrow over the havoc wreaked by the blast, describes the incident as a sad memory in the life of his administration. He says the preliminary and final reports on the cause of the explosion suggested negligence on the part of the gas plant operators. The Lagos State Governor warns that the government will be taking stiffer measures against operators of gas plants and any combustible items in the state to avoid further recurrence of such a disaster. He also commended the first responders who acted promptly on the distress call and worked very quickly to contain the fire. From the gas explosion in Lagos to politics in Ondo State ahead of Saturday's governorship election in Ondo, Electoral body Independent National Electoral Commission has started distributing sensitive material to the 18 local government areas of the state. The materials, which were sealed in different packs, were arranged according to the council areas. The movement of the material was supervised by INEC resident Electoral Commissioner Olusegun Agbaje.
Months into weeks, weeks into days, the people of Ondo State are gearing up to elect a new governor, one whose responsibility is to oversee the state affairs for the next 4 years. This is Akure, and all activities around here point to the fact that something is in the air. On the ground, the show of force is demonstrated in preparation for the poll.
What is happening here at the moment is the distribution of materials to the local government, and that is what you can see on my left. INEC officials, party officials, election observers, security agencies all present here, and they said they have to sort all the materials and distribute appropriately to the local government. They are prioritizing a larger local government, a local government considered to be one of the most difficult terrains to get the materials to. And as I said earlier, 48 hours, and this particular step is a crucial one before the election.
The electoral umpire is sending out sensitive materials to all locations, a crucial step in the electoral process.
We have a movement strategy, and that is to ensure that the farthest local governments are loaded.
They sort the materials in batches and according to various local government areas, all done in the open, with other key players observing the process.
Based on the directives of the Commission and the guidelines stated that you will have to append the signatures on each and every one of them.
Away from the central bank, a civil society organization has some concerns about the terrain and issues of security. They say they have identified some hotbeds that require careful attention.
YAG Africa calls the attention of INEC and security agencies to notorious blind spots in riverine communities of Ilaji and SLO local government areas known for election rigging, perennial logistic challenges, and the threats to polling officials and election materials posed by activities of militants in the region.
But the police appear to have an answer to that worry.
What we are doing is not only to identify, but to take proactive measures to forestall any challenge that might cause. So my take on that is that, yes, there are areas where we have our analysis that might be flashpoints, or where we might have some challenges here and there. We are up to the task.
As the Commission distributes materials, tracking the movements and hoping to block all loopholes, personnel are also being deployed to various locations, with all eyes set on parties involved expected to play their roles in delivering a free, fair and credible election in the state. Dari Idu, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the People's Democratic Party Campaign Council has rejected INEC's Chief Returning Officer for the Ondo governorship election, Professor Eyitokpe Ogunbodede. The opposition party is alleging that the University of Ife Vice-Chancellor is a crony of the All Progressives Congress APC candidate who will not be fair in the discharge of his duty as Chief Returning Officer.
We don't want people that will go out there and just make pronouncements and then they will say the rest is go to the tribunal. No, we will not accept it. We don't want the people of Ondo State to be cheated in this election. And then if you say somebody is a crony, yeah, it's not only that they are from the same town. The technical advisor to the INEC chairman, Professor Bolade Eyila, we know that his wife has a relationship with Professor Ogunbodede. So all we're saying is please decouple of this things. We're watching and we will say to the world, you know, the way it is.
But INEC on its part insists there is no truth in the claims of the PDP concerning the choice of the returning officer for Saturday's election and that the allegation of bias is misplaced.
We as INEC officials, we are yet to know who the returning officer will be. I think by tomorrow, the message will be sent to the resident electoral commissioner on who the returning officer will be, for him to make contact with him. So I don't know the returning officers at now. But beyond that, I want to assure Nigerians that INEC will not do anything that will make them to perceive the election as not being free and fair. And beyond that, again, it is difficult for any returning officer to do anything, to perpetrate any irregularities, because that is the final collation point. meaning that before results get to him, Nigerians already know the result.
In part two, after the break, a federal high court in Lagos freezes 3 bank accounts belonging to the Speaker of the Lagos State House of Assembly, Mudashiru Obasa, plus more on the Ondo election, and we'll be linking up with our political correspondent, Seun Okinbaloye, for the update. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. At least 5 people killed in another gas explosion at the Baruwa area of Lagos, barely 2 weeks after a similar blast in the Iju-Ajuwon area of the city. President Muhammadu Buhari presents 13.8 trillion naira 2021 budget proposal to the joint session of the National Assembly, urges speedy passage of the bill. INEC begins distribution of sensitive material ahead of Saturday's Ondo governorship election, as civil society groups raise concern about potential hotspots in the state. And World Health Organization records highest single-day global coronavirus infections since the start of the pandemic. And staying with the Ondo State governorship election as it relates to the pandemic, the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 has asked participants in Saturday's poll to adhere strictly to the health and safety guidelines. The PTF National Coordinator, Dr. Sani Aliwu, made the call at today's briefing of the task force in Abuja.
We urge everyone to strictly comply with the INEC guidelines that we have worked with INEC to set up with regards to safe elections. We encourage all 17 political candidates of the Ondo elections to please lead by example. Public safety is our main priority, and we urge voters, candidates, and all election officials to adhere strictly to the safety measures that we have put in place with INEC. We must work together to ensure that the protocols issued by the NCDC, PTF, state committees on COVID-19, health authorities, and INEC are observed. We certainly cannot afford to lose the little gain we have made in the fight against the pandemic after the elections.
A federal high court sitting in Lagos has ordered the interim freezing of 3 bank accounts belonging to the Speaker of the Lagos State House of Assembly, Mudashiru Obasa. The accounts domiciled in Standard Chartered Bank are to be temporarily frozen, pending the conclusion of investigations and possible prosecution of the allegations of fraud against the Speaker. Justice Nicholas Owebo made the order following a motion ex parte filed by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, which is investigating him. Meanwhile, the Speaker is said to have honored the EFCC's investigation today to answer questions on the allegations made against him. Now to our correspondent, Seun Okinbaloye, who is standing by in Ondo State to give us an update on the goings-on concerning preparations for the Ondo governorship elections. Seun, the clock is ticking away.
Go ahead. The capital of Ondo State, where we're monitoring for you the coverage of this governorship election, which is slated for Saturday, the 10th of October 2020. Well, there's been some kind of drums of war that we've heard and seen some skirmishes before now, prior to this day. But it looks so much that has been silenced, in the sense that a lot of the violence and the issues of clashes with politicians have all reduced coming up until today. One may thank the the peace pact that was signed by politicians, which we understand about 12 of them signed the peace pact on Monday. And that also culminated into the fact that there is a lot of awareness onto the fact that what politicians need to be saying, the kind of language that needs to be used, that people should go out and cast their ballot. Some information that we have presently is the fact that INEC, as we know, has already started distributing sensitive materials to major areas that election logistics will happen, majorly the rack centers, where you have these materials and personnel that will sleep over Friday night up until Saturday. And there is some changes into our elections due to COVID-19. Elections often start in Nigeria at 8 a.m. and close at 2 p.m. But this time around, it will start at 8:30 a.m. and close at 2:30 p.m. Some of the information INEC is telling us is that as long as you are on the queue on that day before 2:30 p.m., you will be allowed to vote. And until the last person votes, the queue will not end. So we have about 1,822,346 registered voters in Ondo State. Out of that figure, just about 1,478,460 have collected their PVC. So in the real sense of it, it's just about 1.4 million people that will go out to vote tomorrow. A lot of people have raised fears as regarding security, but what we have heard is that the police are deployed, 1 DIG of police and 11 commissioners of police for this election. And of course, we understand that police is telling us that they have trackers for bad boys. They also have working efforts with Navy and the Air Force combing some of the hotbeds in Ondo State, especially the riverine area. It's been raining in Ondo State, and we hope that the clemency of the weather will continue as voters will come on Saturday to vote. Campaigns are over. From tomorrow, we'll be looking forward to what INEC will be doing and security agencies. It's back to you, Olumide.
Thank you, Sheung. To the FCT, President Muhammadu Buhari today presented a 13.8 trillion naira 2021 budget to a joint session of the National Assembly. The 2021 budget, however, has a deficit of 5.2 trillion naira and debt service of 3.1212 trillion naira, representing 3.64% of estimated GDP, slightly above the 3% threshold set by the Fiscal Responsibility Act. Our correspondent Linda Akigwe reports.
At exactly 5 minutes past 11 a.m., President Muhammadu Buhari and his entourage walk into the House of Representatives chamber. He's here to present the 2021 budget to a joint sitting of the National Assembly. President Buhari is delivering the 2021 budget at a time of economic challenges in the country and heightened global uncertainty, which has caused dwindling revenue due to oil price fluctuations in international markets. President Buhari gives assurance that government is prepared to confront these challenges and accelerate economic recovery.
The 2021 appropriation has, therefore, been themed the budget of economic recovery and resilience. Furthermore, the Central Bank of Nigeria is reducing the interest rate on its intervention facilities for 9% to 5% with 1 year moratorium till 31st March 2021 to provide concessional lending of 100 billion naira to households and small businesses.
He admits that revenue generation remains a major challenge, a point noted by the Senate in the MTF report.
The government is already implementing several measures to overcome our fiscal constraints. In addition to the strategic revenue growth initiatives, we are leveraging technology and automation, as well as more effective monitoring of independently generated revenues. our efforts.
Some parameters and fiscal assumptions in the 2021 budget include non-debt recurrent expenditure, 5.65 trillion naira, personnel cost, 3.76 trillion, capital expenditure, 3.85 trillion, statutory transfers, 484.49 billion, and sinking fund, 220 billion naira. With a fiscal deficit of 5.2 trillion and debt service of 3.12 trillion naira, there are concerns about the difficulties in funding the budget as well as fiscal constraints.
We talk every time it's budget season, and yet we bring these huge proposals. And in terms of the reality on ground, obviously we find that implementation is hampered by releases.
The most important thing here is that going forward, we must just invest on some very important areas so that we can be able to grow our economy, support small businesses, also focus on some basic issues.
It's now our responsibility, because we have the power of oversight, to make sure that the revenues that are supposed to go to the federal government actually does go to the federal government, that they don't overspend, and spend outside of their approved budget.
You should expect fiscal deficit because we have low revenue. The COVID affected us. Even apart from that, Mr. President did say that the greatest problem we have is revenue generation.
The Senate and House of Representatives are expected to devote time from now till the end of the year to working and passing the 2021 budget to meet the target of the one-year budget cycle for the country. Linda Akibe, Channels Television News.
We'll have more on the budget presentation by the President Muhammadu Buhari, where I spoke with an expert on his assessment of the issue later on in the course of the news at 10 tonight. In the meantime, the federal government is expressing concern over the low number of persons reporting for COVID-19 tests in the country. And to address this situation, the chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, Mr. Boss Mustafa, says aggressive testing will soon be done through a national testing week. Now, Mr. Mustafa insists there is a need for Nigerians to change their nonchalant attitude towards COVID-19, as the pandemic remains a major source of worry across the world.
It is the weekly briefing of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. One after the other, members of the task force take their seat as they prepare to brief the nation. The chairman of the task force kickstarts the event as he expresses worry over the level of testing in the country.
In order to ramp up testing, the full implementation of a national testing week will be confirmed shortly, where we will go out and test in each and every local government of the Federation.
The Minister of Health takes his turn. He warns Nigerians against being complacent as well as embarking on non-essential travels.
In the past 24 hours, Nigeria recorded 155 COVID-19 cases, bringing the total confirmed cases to 59,738 out of 543,415 persons tested so far. That is just over a quarter of the 2 million that we are pursuing.
As schools reopen nationwide, the Director General of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control announces new guidelines aimed at containing the spread of COVID-19, while the Minister of Aviation restates government's commitment to preventing the importation of new cases.
We're implementing a seroprevalence survey for COVID in 4 states, Gombe, Nasarawa, Lagos, and Enugu states, in collaboration with the Nigerian Institute for Medical Research, who is leading the survey in Lagos, and our partners, US CDC. This survey is going very well. I'd like to thank very much the households where this survey has been implemented in these states.
We've had, sadly, some 27 cases here in Abuja of passengers that are not complying with our requirement for the PCR negative result test. Some of them appeared with rapid test, which is not accepted and not approved. and some of them came with expired PCR, and some with no test at all. Now, the protocol and procedure is that the airlines that have brought in these passengers will be, of course, will answer and will be dealt with accordingly, according to the law.
With 159 new cases within 24 hours, over 59,000 confirmed cases and 1,113 fatalities in Nigeria, the need for caution in order to escape a second wave has become paramount.
When the news at 10 returns, World Bank forecasts 2.1% rebound for sub-Saharan Africa economy in 2021. That's on Business News. Please join us again. Now to today's budget presentation by the President, Muhammadu Buhari, the 2021 budget. The figure is 13.08 trillion naira. Earlier, I spoke to an expert, the Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company, Mr. Bismarck Rwani, on his views.
I think it's very realistic, to be honest with you. It's a bit conservative, and it could be more ambitious, but I think in principles of fiscal consolidation, this budget is realistic and can be accomplished.
Are you satisfied with the 3.8 trillion naira earmarked for capital expenditure as against the recurrent one of 5.6 trillion?
Ideally, no, that should be much higher. We should actually be at 40, 60. But the circumstances we find ourselves are that at this point in time, both recurrent expenditure, an increase in recurrent expenditure, and maintaining the 30% of capital expenditure would help to increase the stimulus to get the economy out of the current recession. So let me state clearly that this budget is based on the Keynesian principles of what we call counter-cyclical spending, which helps to bring economies out of a recession or a steep slowdown. But in this particular case, we also have the problem of inflation. So we have a stagflation situation, which is pretty unique. And therefore, I think it's adequate, 2, it's realistic, and 3, it actually is based on the principles of a stimulus, a fiscal stimulus.
Mr. Rwani, what should Nigerians expect in terms of the outcome of the budgets against the backdrop of the uncertainty in the global economic outlook?
First and foremost, what Nigerians should expect is that the recovery path is going to be hastened. In other words, you will not have a V-shaped recovery, but you will have a U-shaped recovery, which could have been worse if it went further down. That's 1. 2, the stimulus in the area of capex, mainly the rail, the roads, the civil construction, and even the fiscal incentives, is going to help boost that activity, and then you'll have a multiplier effect, which will create some jobs. But the truth is that the total spending of this budget, both recurrent and capital, is only 8% of the GDP. So you need an aggressive and ambitious amount of spending by the states, all put together. But most important is the fact that we need private investment. The private investment will come when there's 1, some certainty about the exchange rate direction. 2, when the fiscal packages are well defined, like you've seen in the petroleum industry government bill. And also 3, when the pricing of products is in the hands of the producers, not controlled and regulated by government agencies.
Finally, Mr. Rwani, you spoke earlier of the budget being a conservative one as against an ambitious one. But isn't it better to err on the side of caution?
Yes, it is. But the point is that when you are in a recession, right, you actually have to be more audacious and more ambitious. The risk of overspending and overheating your economy can be confronted by bringing up interest rates to moderate inflation. So in the end, one thing is clear. There are 5 things that you look at for a budget. How much are you spending? How much are you earning? What is the gap? And how is the gap going to be funded? And is this a proper tool for economic management? Those 5 factors have been considered in this particular budget. The truth is that the sweetness of the pudding, as they always say, isn't eating, and we have to wait to see that happen.
Thank you so much for your expertise on these issues and for coming to speak with us on the News at 10.
Thank you for having me.
The Nigerians in Diaspora Commission has condemned the killing of a Nigerian in the Libyan capital, Tripoli. This is contained in a statement by the chairman, CEO of the commission, Abike Dabiri-Arewa, who also challenged the Libyan authorities to apply the full weight of the law on the suspected killers. She describes the killing as dastardly, bestial, and unacceptable. NIDCOM has also reacted to a video purportedly by a Ghanaian law enforcement officer showing bundles of fake US dollars allegedly found in the vehicle of some Nigerians in Ghana who abandoned the vehicle allegedly and have been on the run. Now, the video purportedly shows the Ghanaian law enforcement officer, his identity shielded, hidden, claiming the fake currency was found under the seat of a Toyota SUV, and he's warning Ghanaians to be wary of Nigerians living in Ghana. NIDCOM questions the authenticity of the officer in the video, the allegations made, and the authenticity of another officer in the video denigrating Nigeria and her people without evidence. To security within the country, operatives of the police anti-kidnapping unit have rescued a lawyer, Bisola Ajayi, who was abducted on October the 4th from a residence in Port Harcourt, the Rivers State capital. Ms. Ajayi was rescued alongside one Paul Nyulaku, a staffer of the British High Commission, Abuja, during a raid in a forest in Okomoko in Eche local government area. The Commissioner of Police, Mr. Joseph Mukin, told journalists that one of the kidnappers was arrested, while another was wounded in the gun battle and confirmed dead in hospital. Items recovered include one AK-47 rifle, a fully loaded magazine, and 100 rounds of live ammunition. The victim says she was manhandled by her abductors and appreciates the police for their timely intervention. The dark side of law enforcement comes to the fore as some youths across the country have taken to the streets to protest what they say is the unprofessional conduct of some of the Police Federal Anti-Robbery Squad, FSARS. The protest walks coming days after the Inspector General of Police issued a directive modifying FSARS operations took place in some major cities like Lagos, Abuja, Owerri, and Ilorin. Youth bearing placards with various inscriptions demanded the dissolution of the police tactical team.
Lekki Phase 1 is the point of convergence in Lagos. Celebrities, Falz and Runtown lead the protest from there to the government house at Marina. They are accompanied by men of the Nigeria police.
You must be good. Yes. You must be safe. Yes. Do you want to be king? No. Do you want SARS? No. Do you want to be...
Youth representing different organizations and schools in Kwara State. They are also accompanied by security operatives from the post office area of Ilorin to the police headquarters and are received by the Deputy Commissioner of Police.
We have listened to your complaints, your petitions, and as earlier told the other group, your petitions are well noted, will be documented, forwarded to the Commissioner of Police, Kwara State Command, who will in turn forward it to the Inspector General of Police to look at it and take deep and proper action.
From the police command, the youth move to the government house where they go into lamentation about killings by SARS operatives.
Because of my iPhone, does that mean that I'm a criminal? These questions and many more are what youth are asking.
The government should be ready to take responsibility. We don't want SARS. SARS should be banned. SARS should be ended for life.
The calmness that characterized the protests in Lagos and Kwara states is absent in Imo State. The protesters are dispersed with tear gas by the officers of the Imo State Police Command. In the process, the Divisional Police Officer of Oji Division pulls out his gun at the protesters.
The DPO pulling out his gun it's not acceptable to us because we are expected to be civil to the members of the public. Well, I guess the DP was trying to probably put them away when they were trying to approach him, to mob him.
In Benin City, a group of youth converged on Ring Road before marching onto the NUJ Secretariat and later on to the Edo State Police Command headquarters to express their grievances. The protesters also hit the streets in the nation's capital, Abuja. Besides the placards calling for the end of FSARS, their chants include a demand to see the Inspector General of Police. As many Nigerians continue to express their displeasure over the recent activities of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, the authorities may have to take appropriate steps to curb the officers' actions, which are considered by many as high-handed.
Meanwhile, the Delta State Police Command have arrested and paraded a young man identified as Nicholas Makolumi, who allegedly posted a viral video falsely claiming that the Special Anti-Robbery Squad shot and killed a man. Police spokesperson in the state condemned what he described as the falsehood surrounding that video. He says investigations are still ongoing, after which the suspect will be charged to court and face the full wrath of the law if found guilty. Elsewhere, as part of efforts at eliminating ticket racketeering at train stations, the Nigerian Railway Corporation have announced the introduction of e-tickets. Now, according to the managing director of the corporation, the introduction of the e-tickets becomes necessary as several changes of personnel at the various train stations failed to yield the desired result. He was explaining this to journalists at the Idu train station after unscheduled visits appealed to passengers to stop patronizing touts. And now it's time for business news. Here's Teniola Shobowale.
Thanks, Olumide. Welcome to Business News. Economies in sub-Saharan Africa are expected to rebound by 2.1% next year and 3.2% in 2022. That's according to latest forecast released by the World Bank. In its latest outlook for the region, the International Financial Institution says countries such as Nigeria, South Africa and Ethiopia are already implementing long-term reforms which are needed to enable them recover from the 3.3% contraction expected this year, which is caused by the combined impact of COVID-19 and lower oil prices. Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari told the Senate at the presentation of the budget proposal for 2021 that his administration is working to ensure a rapid economic recovery next year through measures such as the 2.3 trillion naira economic stimulus plan, which is expected to reduce the impact of looming recession in the country. The Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries has launched the 2020 World Oil Outlook with an extension to 2045 for the first time, providing a 5-year window to examine developments in the oil and energy sector. According to the report, global primary energy demand is forecast to continue growing in long term, increasing by a significant 25% in the period to 2045, driven largely by the expected doubling of GDP growth and the addition of around 1.7 billion people worldwide by 2045. The outlook adds that oil will retain the largest share of the energy mix throughout the forecast period, providing nearly 28% of the global needs in 2045, followed by gas and coal. Now, the federal government plans to establish special economic zones for solid minerals and creating a large number of employment opportunities. This was made known in a statement by the Managing Director of the Nigeria Export Processing Zones Authority, Mr. Adesoji Adeshuba. According to him, the initiative is part of the government's promise to revamp the mining sector to enable it to contribute more to national income. He explains that plans were underway for the establishment of 4 special economic zones in Lagos, Gombe, Kwara and Katsina states with special consideration for solid minerals. Let's check in on the stock market now. Nigeria's stock market ended today's trading session negative, marking the second consecutive day decline after an almost 2-week rally as investors extend profit-taking on high-value equities such as Dangote Cement, Nigerian breweries and Boa Cement. Ekaite Afia has details of today's transactions on the NSE.
Thank you for for joining us for the stock market report. Contrary to traders' expectation, the stock market failed to make a rebound from Wednesday profit-taking, as the bears appear to be stepping up their pace into the bulls' territory. Now, just a day after recording its first drop after a 12-day rally, the NSE's main index fell further, but by a smaller margin of 0.31% compared to the 0.95% loss recorded on Wednesday. However, analysts say this comes as no surprise, as investors are still taking advantage of the strong gains recorded this week, while the market still holds more fundamentals, such as the recent reduction of monetary policy rate by the CBN MPC, the upward review of the Nigeria's rating by Fitch from negative to stable last week, which will continue to stimulate investors until earnings season begins. Now, let's take a look at the activity chart. We can see that although the volume of shares traded today was lower, in contrast to the previous session, the turnover remains impressive, with more than 560 million units traded in over 6,000 transactions. The stock market may be unpredictable for now, but one thing remains certain, and that is investors are still hopeful for a sharp rebound in Friday's trading session. Well, that's all for the stock market report. I'm Akaite Afia.
And that's business news tonight. It's back to you, Olumide.
Much obliged, Teniola. On the foreign scene, data from the World Health Organization shows there's been more than 338,779 new coronavirus infections reported globally in the previous 24 hours, making it the biggest one-day increase since the pandemic began. Breaking down the information, the three countries with the highest cases globally, the US, India, and Brazil, recorded 38,904, 78,524, and 41,906 cases. This comes as more than 35.5 million people around the world have contracted the virus. Here's Simon Pusey with more international news and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. The US President Donald Trump says he won't take part in a virtual debate with his Democratic rival Joe Biden.
No, I'm not going to waste my time on a virtual debate.
The Commission deciding the format of the 15th of October debate said it would have to take place virtually after Trump was diagnosed with coronavirus. He has been treated in hospital and discharged, apparently because he has no current symptoms. That's according to his doctors. Trump says he will not waste his time on the virtual debate that he says has been ordered to protect his rival.
Is he only cutting?
The announcement comes the day after the vice presidential debate between Democrat Kamala Harris and Republican Mike Pence. The contenders clashed early during their debate, but ended on a message of bipartisanship and civility. The policy-heavy debate stood in stark contrast to last week's chaotic debate between Trump and Biden, which was dominated by constant interruptions and personal insults.
I mean, here in America, we can disagree. We can debate vigorously, as Senator Harris and I have on this stage tonight. But when the debate is over, we come together as Americans. And that's what people do in big cities and small towns all across this country. So I just want to encourage you, Brecklin. I want to tell you that we're going to work every day to have government as good as our people.
Joe has a long-standing reputation of working across the aisle and working in a bipartisan way. And that's what he's going to do as president. Joe Biden has a history of lifting people up and fighting for their dignity.
Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Brazil have passed 5 million, with deaths in the country approaching 150,000. That's according to local officials. The country has the third highest amount of infections after only the US and India. President Jair Bolsonaro has been accused of downplaying the risks of the virus throughout the pandemic, ignoring expert advice on restrictive measures. COVID-19 has also been soaring across Europe, with countries on the continent implementing new restrictions. Italy has made it mandatory to wear face masks in public spaces across the country. Meanwhile, in Belgium, the capital Brussels, cafes and bars, but not restaurants, will remain closed for at least a month. Workers in Indonesia have protested for the third consecutive day after a new job creation law was passed this week. Thousands have taken part in strikes and demonstrations in several cities, with hundreds detained by police. Protesters have said they are worried that the so-called omnibus law will hurt both workers and the environment, but the government has said the changes are needed to help its economy, which has been strongly impacted by the pandemic. A stolen calligraphy scroll that contains stanzas of poetry handwritten by Chinese Communist leader Mao Zedong that is said to be worth millions has been found in Hong Kong. Thieves had stolen the scroll by the founder of the People's Republic of China from an art collector's home in a burglary last month. They then sold it at a fraction of its value. It was apparently cut up as the 2.8-metre long scroll was deemed too long to display. That's according to local police. The original owner has said that the artwork's value has been definitely affected. Demonstrators have poured onto the streets of Namibia's capital, Windhoek, to protest against violence towards women after the body of a woman was discovered in a shallow grave. The body of Shannon Waterfall, who went missing 6 months ago, was discovered after police were tipped off by an anonymous text message. Waterfall had dropped off her son at a friend's house before heading out to meet someone. Activists have linked her disappearance and death to gender-based violence and have called for investigations to bring those responsible to justice. The authorities in Mali have announced the release of a dozen political and military figures arrested during a coup in August. They include the former Prime Minister Boubou Cissé. The transitional government announced a new cabinet this week in which members of the junta were handed several key posts, including defence, security and national reconciliation. The West African regional bloc, ECOWAS, has lifted sanctions on Mali, acknowledging what it called notable advances towards constitutional normalisation. And finally, Britain's Prince William has launched a multi-million-pound global prize aimed at solving the world's environmental problems.
Never before.
The project, called the Earthshot Prize, will award 5 £1 million prizes each year for the next 10 years under the categories of protecting and restoring nature, cleaner air, oceans, waste reduction and climate change. The British royal family have been vocal campaigners on environmental issues for years.
So I really feel, from an emotional point of view as well, I think every parent, everyone wants to do the best for their children, and I think we have to have a decade of change, a decade of repairing the planet so that we can hand it on to the next generation and future generations and sustain the prosperity for their lives too.
And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon. The Nigerian Football Federation have dismissed reports making the rounds that 4 players of the Super Eagles have tested positive for COVID-19. According to the NFF, the reports are totally false and that the results of tests carried out ahead of tomorrow's game in Austria are still being expected. Meanwhile, Super Eagles coach Gernot Rohr has confirmed that former Germany under-20 star Kevin Akpoguma will play some part against Algeria tomorrow. The 25-year-old Hoffenheim defender just committed his international future to Nigeria, having played at all youth levels for Germany. Sofia Kenin is through to her second Grand Slam final of 2020 after overcoming 7th seed Petra Kvitova 6-4, 7-5 at Roland Garros. The Australian Open champion had lost both her previous meetings with Kvitova, but prevailed on this occasion in 1 hour 45 minutes. And standing between Kenin and a second major is 19-year-old Polish sensation Iga Swiatek. Swiatek dismantled Nadia Podorodzka 6-2, 6-1 to become the first Polish woman to reach the final of the French Open during the Open era. That sports news is back to you, Olumide, for the wrap.
Thank you, Ayo. And the main news again, at least 5 people were today killed following another gas explosion in the nation's commercial capital, Lagos. This incident came barely 2 weeks after a similar blast occurred in the Ijuajuwon area of the city. That's it on the news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Olumide Macaulay.